you've got to get yourself into the frame of mind of saying, I can work my way out of this. This is a positive. This is sent to challenge me, but it's sent to make me better.
Welcome to the show, wherever you're watching from in Australia. The great man, Paul Shean's on the couch, former Aussie cricket legend, but he's just a legend all around. I saw him come down the driveway before, and he's, those people who's just a young fella, good bloke, and this is his story. Thanks for coming, Paul.
Michael,
you're amazing, man.
What
I saw
an
you down the
introduction.
driveway, and, sometimes at, how old are you, 48?
Would I be 48? My God, what's that, 26 years ago? No, I'd very happily be 48, I think.
Yeah. I'm impressed with your life, and I think you've got so many lessons to share, because a lot of people don't know about your life. They remember you as a, I do say cricket legend, but on the 30th of September 1946, the great man was born.
Is that me?
So
The journey started, yeah. I was born in Werribee.
Yeah.
Not much of a town then, probably market gardens, and that's about it. My father was a public servant. My grandfather, who was a fantastic man, but only lived for about 4 or 5 years of my life, used to work at the Metropolitan Farm, which was just on the other side of Werribee. So it's been a long, long journey from those days when my father used to dink me around on his bike, to now when I can actually afford to drive a car.
Now, school. You finished school, and a lot of people don't know that you were the headmaster of Melbourne Grammar for, 1995 to...
Yeah, 2009, early part of 2009. Yes. Yeah, a fantastic opportunity for me. Yeah. I mean, I guess teaching is a bit of a calling. You have to be interested in young people, and you don't need to be interested in money, because you're not going to make any if you teach. I mean, I can't say that I wasn't reasonably well paid when I was a headmaster, but if you're a classroom teacher, you're not paid well. But you get fantastic rewards from seeing young kids develop. And, you see them when they come into the prep school and they're knee-high to a grasshopper, and then 13 years later, they go out of the top of year 12, ready to take on the world. And that's a fantastic experience.
It'd be beautiful. Now, Paul, you've achieved spectacular success. It seems like everything you do to an excellent, outstanding standard. The passion for cricket.
Yes, that really developed from my father. I've got an older sister, and then a brother, and then there's me. I'm the third in the family. And my sister was never going to play cricket for Australia, because in those days, the ladies didn't play for Australia. Nice to see that they do now. My brother made the tragic mistake of getting interested in rowing. Wow. And that put him out of the picture. My father, who was obsessed with cricket, channeled all his hopes and aspirations into me, and I'm sure he lived vicariously through me too. But I happened to be reasonably athletic, and I could pick up the lessons he was teaching me. And I think I started in the back garden at home at the age of about 5, 6, and it all unfolded from there.
It certainly unfolded. 31 tests and 3 one-day international opening batsman, was it?
In the end, I was, yeah. I started at number 3, playing against the Indians back in the late 1960s, and thank goodness Shami and Bumrah and those blokes weren't playing then. The Indian opening attack was about my pace back in the 1960s. Then I dropped down to number 6, and I found that hard. I didn't much like sitting around waiting to get a hit, and often with, the likes of Stacky and Ian Chappell and Ian Redpath, Bob Cowper, that lot ahead of me. I wasn't going to get an early hit, and I just used to get a bit nervous, I suppose. And coming in, if you'd lost quick wickets, you were going to have to be the sort of concrete that held the thing together. But if you came in when we were 4 for 300, then you're expected to smash the thing all over the park right from the outset. So in the end, I went to Ian Chappell on the tour of England in 1972 and said, Chappelli, that was his nickname, give me a chance to open. I'm not going to get in the test side at number 6. I hadn't been playing to that stage. And to his credit, he said, yep, we might be able to make something out of that. So I finished my career opening with Stacky, had a great partnership. Personally, we still see quite a bit of each other and talk on the phone every couple of weeks.
A great adventure, Paul. Millions around Australia know you and respect you. For the younger generation who don't know you, who is Paul Shean? Who are you?
That's a very searching question, Michael.
The elevator pitch, like a Supreme Court judge said to me one time, Michael, he goes, we always assume everybody knows about our life story, but if we met a 9-year-old girl at the elevator, just about to embark on the elevator, and she said to you, who's Paul Shean? You would say? Well,
I'd say you probably made sense not knowing who I am, because it wouldn't advance your life if you knew who I was. But look, I'm somebody who's desperately keen on people. I love to see people succeed. I want to try and help people. I think I'm reasonably approachable, although there'll be, I've held positions where people assume that you are remote and, don't touch me, I'm important. And I'm desperately keen to see my children and my grandchildren succeed. So the thing that I think I'm good about, I graduated in mathematics, but I'm not a mathematician by any stretch of the imagination. The thing that really interests me is people. And I think that's where my skills are.
After the break, Paul, but you're very humble. You still haven't told us about all those
That would come as a surprise to many, Michael. That would come as a surprise.
We'll be back very shortly with the humble and great man, Paul Shean. Welcome back to the show, Paul. An amazing life journey, and you've only just begun. You've got so many more things to do, but teaching and then being a world-class cricket player, how did it combine?
Yeah, it's an interesting marriage, actually, Michael. But in those days, you only played cricket during the summer, and in fact, there might not even be an international team here for a particular summer. These days, they are playing 12 to 15 tests a year. So cricket in the 1960s and early 70s was entirely in the summer, and that coincided perfectly with school holidays. And I was teaching in my early days in the education department, and their policy was to give you time off if you were selected to play for your state or your country.
It must have been a wonderful
So it was very good. The only thing that used to bug me a bit, and it was a time when, the quid was a bit tight, was the fact that I dropped my pay over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday, for a Shield match, when my mates with whom I was teaching could come along and watch, and they were getting paid. Anyway, look, it was...
You would have been the most... famous. The whole school would have watched you in great inspiration and fame. How did you deal with people coming up to you in the street and wanting to talk to you? How did you deal with all that?
Well, look, I was saying before, Michael, I actually quite like people, and I do quite like talking. In fact, I think most people who came up to talk to me said at the end of it all, look, for Christ's sake, stop. I've got to go. People are very generous, and Australia's an enormous sports-loving nation, and anybody who's happens to be playing is going to be recognised by some people. You just have to deal with that. It's worse, much worse these days when they get so much media exposure, so every person in the country knows them. But the thing that you always have to remember is it comes to an end. It'll finish when you stop playing. Nobody will care who you are. They're on to the next generation. And it's one of the things in life you've got to learn to deal with, I think. The fact that maybe you're important 1 minute, but you're important because of what you've done. If you're no longer doing that, that's the end of you.
Well, I think you're more important than ever, because you've got this whole... you're the full package now. You were there, and now you've got so much to pass on. President of the Melbourne Cricket Club. What was that like?
That was a fantastic experience. I owe the Melbourne Cricket Club so much.
Because you were involved for many years anyway.
I was. It was actually where I played my club cricket. There was a long-time committee man who's now dead called Clive Fairbairn, who was the sort of the initiator of young people into the Melbourne Cricket Club. And he was, I think he'd lived at one stage in Geelong, and he'd heard about me from playing cricket at school. And thankfully for me, made the journey down to Geelong, convinced my father and me that was the place to go, and I started playing in 1963 during school holidays with Melbourne, and I eventually, sometime later on, joined the committee, and that started a journey that was a fantastic experience.
A fantastic journey to the point that the leaders in the community gave you an Order of Australia. How was that experience?
Yeah, that was very humbling. I'm not sure whether I should tell this story, but when you're given an award in the Order of Australia, you go to Government House either in Melbourne or Canberra if you can to be presented with it, but you're only allowed 2 guests, and I've got 3 daughters who were pretty keen to join me, and so I was able to give legally 2 tickets to the elder daughters, who are twins. And then one of the organisers of the ceremony, who happens to be on the Order of Australia committee, said, "Don't worry about that. Stick your 3rd daughter in the boot of the car and I'll cart her in." So I managed to get all 3 in, which was a nice thing.
And can you remember who presented that prestigious award?
Yes, it was the current governor, and she's a remarkable person. She's not the tallest woman you'll come across in your life, but boy, has she got an intellect. She is as sharp as a tack, stylish, and a really interesting person to talk to. She was a Supreme Court judge before she became governor, and it was an enormous thrill when she pinned that little badge on the lapel.
Congratulations, Paul. I wish we had 3 hours, not 30 minutes. Tell me about Shane Warne.
Yeah, Warnie's clearly he's a fantastic cricketer. He could, bowl the ears off me without any question. And he's a phenomenal self-promoter. When things look as though they might be winding down a bit for him, he has an enormous capacity to do something outlandish, a bit like Sam Newman, that'll attract publicity again. And look, he's a good thing. He's got a heart of gold. He loves helping people, young kids who are trying to learn the art of leg spin. Warnie's there to help them as much as he can.
Amazing. Tell me about Kerry Packer.
I never met Kerry. I'd retired early in the 1974 season at the age of 27. So I was still young enough and fit enough to be playing around World Series cricket. But I might have made a couple of disparaging remarks about Kerry and World Series cricket, and they never came near me. Not that I was particularly concerned about it, because I'd got to the point in 1974 where I was married, I had 3 kids, I was living in Geelong. What do? Do I carve out a career in cricket, or do I carve out a career in teaching?
It's a great place, Geelong, isn't it? You would have met the great man, the Fruiterer. What's his name again?
Oh, Frank Costa.
Frank Costa,
magnificent man.
He's a
struggling a bit
fella.
Physically at the moment, but a great man.
Is he? God bless him. All right, we'll be back very shortly. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. This beautiful, authentic and successful man's got 2 children and 10 grandchildren, and he's got so much more of life ahead of him, and the best days are still ahead. Oh.
Minor correction, Michael, 3 kids.
3 kids?
Yeah, and 10 grandchildren.
Wow.
I had twins, and then And then another one came along.
Must have been a great Christmas break.
Well, I tell you what, with 10 grandkids, it's a very expensive year now. You've got a birthday every month, and then you've got Christ knows how many presents to buy at Christmas time.
Paul, tough times. As we get older, I can feel it myself. The health, sort of little things go wrong.
Yeah.
You had a triple bypass a few years ago, did you?
Yeah, 5 years ago, quadruple. I'd had this mad-headed idea that I wanted to run a marathon before I turned 40. Well, I didn't manage that. Then I got into my 60s and had a relationship with a girl who is a very, very keen runner and very good ultra runner. And she said, you were going to do that. Why don't you have a go now? That was at 69. So I said, righto, I'll give it a go. And did the training, was within a fortnight of getting on the plane to go to Berlin. I'd chosen Berlin because it was the flattest marathon track in the world, and therefore the least painful, one might have hoped. And she said, look, I think at your age you ought to go in for a full test. Well, to cut a long story short, I finished up in Epworth having a quadruple bypass, and that put paid to the marathon that year. But I thought, along with the cardiologist, if you feel all right, keep running. So I did, and I thought, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it. So I went back 12 months later and actually, I say completed a marathon rather than ran a marathon because it was pretty ugly towards the end.
Congratulations, Paul. That's amazing. And I've got to say, Epworth did a wonderful job. I've been to some of their charity lunches and dinners. They do a great job in men's health, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And the heart department, heart unit there is outstanding. Absolutely outstanding.
So you're saying that us blokes, we're not looking after ourselves?
We're not, and it was brought home to me very, very sharply by that particular incident. I was as fit as a trout.
Yeah.
I hadn't actually had any symptoms, and I didn't have a heart attack. So the repair job has been done extraordinarily well.
Yes.
But it just shows you that, you can wake up and you can think, I've got a bit of an ache in the chest or wherever. It'll pass in a couple of days, and men are particularly good at saying that sort of thing. And you let it go for not 2 or 3 days, you let it go for 2 or 3 months, and then it's a disaster. Men are not good at looking after their personal health. Women are much, much better.
You're so right, Paul. Paul, a lot of people depressed, anxiety, mental health. They say half the population are now suffering from some type of mental health problem. What's your advice on success, and what's your advice on people who are going through a very difficult crisis at the moment?
Yeah, that's a searching question. There's a hell of a lot of people who have tried to find the definitive answer, and I don't know that there is a definitive answer. But failure is not failure. It's simply an occurrence before you succeed. I mean, in the end, I think a lot of your approach to life depends on whether you're positive or not. And whether you think, yes, in the end, things will work out happily for me. Or whether you're one who thinks, oh God, around the corners there's another disaster. I'm just going from bad to worse. And I don't know whether you learn that from your environment and your parents, or whether it's built into your DNA, or what it is. But some people are naturally positive. Some people are naturally downward thinkers.
You're so right, Paul. You're so right. So we all go through those tough times of life. So when you went through your emotional lows in life, how did you handle those?
Well, I think the fact that I'd played a fair bit of sport helped enormously, because, in the back of the mind there was the comment, the saying, the cliche, the well-worn phrase, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. And I think when things are looking bad, that's a test for you personally to say, righto, here's a challenge for me. How am I going to overcome it? Rather than, here's a challenge for me, I'll collapse. And somehow you've got to get yourself into the frame of mind of saying, I can work my way out of this. This is a positive. This is sent to challenge me, but it's sent to make me better in the future.
Great advice.
I mean, you're never going to go through life being happy 100% of the time. In fact, if you're never sad, how do you know you're happy?
You're
So
right.
you've got to expect at times that you're not going to feel on top of the world. Who was it? Our great former Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser said life wasn't meant to be easy, and it isn't. It will throw up things that make you feel down, blue for a while, but it's how you endeavour to deal with those things that's important. Now, I don't understand whether some of these things are so chronic that it's easy for me to say, think positively, and there are some people who cannot think positively. All I would say is, if you're in that position, seek help. Don't try and work it through yourself. Seek help.
Paul, thank you very much for sharing in such a short space of time. I honour and respect you, and thanks for making the time.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Michael.
All the best for the weekend, and thanks very much for watching. We'll see you next week. Good night.